I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes.
That was the biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
we welcome you all to slow motion for this presentation of the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and DeGassis heading into 5.
Oh, it's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh, no.
Oh, and there's contact as well. Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and for one final time here for Season 4 of 2024, welcome back to the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. This is the 13th and final round of this season, coming to you today from Okayama. My name is Ron Maunz, alongside me working the comms and the cams is Josh Wilkie. And now, Josh, after a long and arduous season, we have finally reached the season finale. It's been a long road for these drivers to get here. We visited some fantastic racetracks, have had all different manners of races, but it's been a brilliant ride up to this point. And even though we've got 12 races in our rearview mirror, the closeness and always competitive nature of the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series has led us to this point where we've got some fantastic championship fights to keep tabs on throughout the 30 minutes of racing action we have coming up for you viewers here today. So Josh, I think we're in for one heck of a season finale.
Yeah, absolutely. What a season we've had here, Ron, for sure. It's been just a wonderful season, and we're all finishing it up here at Okayama, which is definitely going to be a track that a lot of people out here have been on before, probably numerous times as well. It's one that you're going to visit on iRacing pretty early in the iRacing career, and then multiple times after that as well throughout the year. So I would imagine that a lot of the drivers today are going to have a pretty good handle on this track, and we should probably have some pretty good racing around here for our final round, Ron.
Oh, I am certainly not going to rule that out at all. Okayama, as you just mentioned, it's an iRacing classic, you know. Thankfully, iRacing kind of reworked this track a couple of seasons ago. Was getting a little bit outdated, a teeny tiny bit ugly, but now with a fresh lick of paint around this racetrack, it is a wonderful part of the iRacing service. Everyone's driven around here at some point. Believe me when I say that I have some horror stories surrounding running Global MX5 races around this very racetrack, trying to get out rookies and road course, and that is probably a subject for a whole nother day. But this track is a wonderful ride in the world of motorsports. Has hosted 2 Formula 1 Grand Prix back in 1994 and 1995. Even back then, this track was very, very small in the world of Formula 1 and pretty fast as well, despite the fact it's only got like one majorly long straightaway. Just saw the end of that following this absolute hornet's nest in this practice session. We're not even in qualifying or the race. These drivers already battling, and oh, that's a quick little spin. I believe it's Chris Montgomery, currently slotted in 7th in this practice session. These drivers are already feeling a little bit racy, and I think honestly, Josh, that's a pretty good representation of the kind of racing we're going to be expecting today. Side-by-side racing heading into the hairpin at the end of the back straightaway.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were saying on the run up there, Ron, there's going to be quite a bit of the skill gap that we may have seen in a few other tracks really isn't going to be present around here because people have probably turned so many laps around here. And a lot of the time, really what that does is just make a pretty contentious race. When you're not fighting the track and you're out there only fighting your competitor, your mind really kind of just tends to stay on the competitor, and that can a lot of the time cause some accidents and stuff. You get a little bit more the bit between your teeth and kind of know the track, and you think you're a little faster than everybody, and it can kind of cause some problems out there. So I have a feeling we're going to have a pretty interesting race today.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty interesting race, pretty exciting as well. And, it's just one of the wonderful racetracks that we visited all throughout the season. Kicked off a couple of months ago at Alton Park. Then we went to tracks like VIR, running on the north configuration to be a bit more precise. Went to Mid-Ohio shortly thereafter, followed by Navarra, Oschersleben, Rudskogen, Summit Point, Zandvoort, Indianapolis. Take a deep breath in. Lime Rock, Lebanon, Laguna Seca, and leading us to the season finale here today at Okayama, a wonderful ride in the world of racing. 11 corners in all, and an odd part of this racetrack is an odd fact with some of the corner names around this racetrack. If anyone's looked at the track map of Okayama and you notice there's sections like Williams Turn 2, the Moss S, Atwood Curve, Revolver, Piper, Redmond, Hobbs, Mike Knight Corner, and then the last corner, fittingly being called Last Corner. Some odd corner names around this racetrack, and there's a good reason for that. Okayama originally opened as kind of like a motorsports resort, sort of how people see like VIR nowadays, but it's a really odd story. So when it opened, there was the people who operated this track decided to invite a bunch of old British racing drivers to kind of like do a little demonstration to people at the track on its first day of operations. And to the people who did race in that, like Sir Sterling Moss, for instance, you got a corner named after you. So that's a pretty slick deal, honestly, Josh. It would be nice if there's some racetracks out there that just name you if you do enough laps around it. So I'm sure quite a few corners around the Slinger Figure 8 would maybe have my last name all over it and probably make that some of the least enjoyable corners on the lap, for the simple sake that my last name is kind of like Scrabble tiles in terms of pronouncing it for some people. But this practice session now brought to a close. Thortulo set the pace there, and we're looking to try and see if he can continue that pace into this qualifying session that we have coming up. Tulo, he has been consistently quick all throughout this season, and it's off the back of a victory last time out at Laguna Seca. Seemed like the word victory is a bit too much of a mouthful for me on this broadcast today, but Tulo, he's been quick all throughout this season. But one driver that's going to stick out to me in terms of that practice sheet is Stefan Heemskerk, who was slotted in right behind. That may be a storyline that we have to keep our eyes on all throughout this race.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron, for sure. We are having a bit of an issue with our cameras here today. I am trying desperately to figure out what is going on here, so I do apologize for whatever is happening to my cameras right now. I'm going to have to put a shield up here for a bit, Ron, so I'm going to have to get you on the radio here, and unfortunately, iRacing is not playing ball with me at the moment, so we will try to fix this as quickly as we can.
Alrighty, doing radio-style broadcasting here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Feel like I need to break out like a radio announcer's voice or something like that. It's like a late evening radio, so let me... Good evening, everybody. You're tuning into the sultry sounds of Slow Motion Broadcasting and the final round of the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors Series. That right there is that right there is appalling. I would like to apologize to anyone who may have been disturbed by that very low-pitched voice. That's probably the lowest I've ever gone on a broadcast ever. Point blank period in my entire broadcasting career. I don't think we're going to try and replicate that anytime soon. So I think we'll just talk about this qualifying session that we are getting underway here. About a minute and a half on the board at the moment. No lap times on the board. But I gotta say, talking about the practice results that we saw earlier on, you got the likes of Tulo up there. However, the main driver that he's going to be fighting with in terms of the championship is Jason Green. He was fourth quickest in that practice session earlier on. Those are the two drivers that we're going to be keeping our eyes on all throughout this broadcast to see who exactly is going to take dibs and win the Spec 1 championship here for the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors for Season 4 of 2024. I'm looking through, got got a whole lot of names that you see in the Weekend Warriors world, but haven't really seen in the Formula V's all throughout this season. You got the usual suspects, Thor Tulo, Stefan Heemskerk. Parvinder Ladar has been a really great driver to follow all throughout this season. Haven't seen him too much throughout. It would be nice if he was a consistent force in the series, because I think if he was, he would be a consistent force in contending for some championships. He was actually third in that practice session earlier, so he may be a little bit of a thorn in the side for the likes of Thor Tulo and Jason Green. But looking through, we got some other Weekend Warriors staples here as well. York Monty, who we have seen run occasionally throughout this season. Jesus Rodriguez, who's going to relinquish his crown as the Spec 1 champion, won it in Season 3 for 2024, not going to win it here for 2024 Season 4. He was actually showing a decent amount of pace in the practice session earlier, so we may need to keep tabs on the driver, the number 76 car. And looking through some other names as well, Antonio Reese running the 007 car, so that'll be, I'm sure we're going to make some James Bond jokes all throughout this broadcast. He's running here today. Got the likes of Simon Mayer and Andrew Love. I remember the battle that they had a couple of rounds ago at Indianapolis, but got a stacked grid of racers, bringing this season to a close in a very spectacular fashion with a grid consisting of about 40 racers. So Josh, I think this is going to be a real good way to bring this season to a close. I'll pass it back off to you a little bit and let you get a word in edgewise once we get these technical issues sorted out right now. These drivers about to close off their first qualifying laps, and we'll run through how the results look once the lap times get put on the board. I believe the first driver who's going to cross the line is going to be Edgar Sancinelli. So let's see how the driver of the 257 car will be able to do. Set a 1 minute 50.9 in the practice session earlier. Let's see, is it a qualifying time posted on the board for him? Yes, it is. He goes to provisional pole at a 1 minute 50.985, but as I say that, all the other lap times go on the board. Tulo now at the front, Montgomery in second, Green jumping his way up into P2. Tulo and Green, they're going to be itchy and scratchy throughout this race. They are going to be battling tit for tat. It's going to be like an episode of Tom and Jerry between these two, I think.
Yeah, hopefully at the end of the season here, we can get a nice close race from everybody. We don't have too many issues or anything like that. You know, again, like we were saying in the run-up, though, I have a feeling this one's going to be a little contentious, Ron, just because it is a track that everybody knows so well, and we know these corners so well, and I have a feeling, you know, end of the season here, we got some points for people to make up, some places potentially for people to make up, and I have a feeling that we're probably going to see that on the track today as well, Ron. It looks like we have our technical issues figured out, a quick reset, a quick look in the folders, and we are good to go here. So the cameras are working, the sound is working, the new microphone for Ron sounds fantastic, and this is our last round, Ron. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, it has been a brilliant season. I gotta say, fingers crossed that we're back together for Season 1 of 2025, which is going to officially mark 2 years of me doing this sim racing broadcasting. I got into it at the end of Season 3 of 2021. Dear Lord above. Qualifying times being posted on the board. It's a driver who I don't think we've seen at all throughout this season, that being CJ Berry. He's now on the provisional pole to 1 minute 49.024, so that's a very good lap time for the driver of the number 65 car. Let's see if he gets usurped currently in pit lane at the moment. He's already set a couple of lap times, so I'm not sure if he will be able to get any more posted, so we'll have to keep our tabs on to see whether or not CJ Berry is going to remain in that provisional pole spot, or whether a driver like Thor Tulo, Jason Green, who we're still following right now, or the likes of Stefan Heemskerk and Dylan Fernando, who's currently in fourth, and the provisional pole sitter in the Spec 2 category as well. Tulo comes across the line now, and it is an improvement lap time wise to go to 1 minute 49.037, but that's not going to be enough to grab the pole for now. Anything can happen between now and the end of this qualifying session. To those tuning into the series for the first time, got a 15-minute long qualifying session that we're in the midst of right now. These drivers have 4 laps to try and get the job done, so Tulo still with a bit more time in his back pocket and basically no time between himself and the pole.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely how you manage your time out there and getting those laps in and stuff for sure, getting that heat into the tires as well. And it looks like Christopher Berry here too. I don't think we've seen him. Have we seen him at all this year, Ron? And he's at the top of the field again, so hopefully we're going to have to see him next year and stuff as well. Hopefully he will be out here a little bit more, but he's a bit of a class of the field at the moment here as we're looking at Parvinder Ladar in third for Spec 2 at the moment, hoping for some more time out there. Let's see if we can't get a dashboard up and get some of these top speeds as well, Ron.
And that would be very nice to see how much these drivers are hauling the mail around this racetrack, despite the fact it's a little bit on the tiny end at just 2.31 miles according to iRacing statistics, which chances are probably wildly inaccurate. It's still a small track though, and really this back straightaway that we're running on board with Parviner Ladar on right now, just about the longest flat out blast around this entire lap, but still going to create a nice overtaking opportunity heading off into turn number 5. Don't want to outbrake yourself too much though heading into that corner, as I mentioned earlier on the show, talking about some of the horror stories that I've had in reference to running some global MX5 Cup races on iRacing in the past. I remember, God, I was probably about 16 back in 2021 running an iRace around here in the MX5s, went for a dive bomb move heading off into the first corner, felt really good about my chances until I hit the brakes and then realized that I went so deep into the corner that I was probably going to end up in Mongolia, considering how far I went into it. So that was a round of bowling that I'm sure these racers are going to try and hope, pray to God, whatever they want to do, hope that they do not replicate, because if you want to replicate anything from my iRacing career, certainly don't want to replicate the accidents if you want to replicate anything at all.
Yeah, let's try not to replicate any accidents out there for sure, Ron. You know, this place has always kind of offered up a bit of a unique challenge, at least for me anyways, especially the second half of the course here. It gets a little bit difficult near the end there, and it's kind of fiddly here and there. It's hard to get the power down in certain cars and so on. But there's a pretty good straightaway along the back there as well that I think we're going to have a very good draft into. And that corner, basically, you can almost call it a hairpin, a right-hand hairpin. Then it kind of gets into a bit of a fiddly section there, and I think that's probably where we're going to see most of our passing. Right into this corner here. Got to get the entrance just right and the power down, and it looks like just there didn't quite get it down as well as you'd like to, but this straightaway here is definitely going to be our longest straightaway on the track and our best opportunity to get some passing done as well into that corner down at the end.
Oh, that section is absolutely going to be prime real estate if you want to try and get a move done. A lot of racers going to be experimenting with any sort of move that they can pull off, going through the iRacing chronicles, trying to figure out what the right word would be to figure out, okay, what moves have been replicated, which ones have been done successfully, which ones have been done poorly. Just trying to figure out where you can get some moves done around this racetrack. Gonna be pretty tough, gotta say though. Speaking of tough, that was a tough lap time for CJ Barry because Thortulo just pipped him to the pole. Now at a 1-minute 48.966. That's a very good lap time from Tulo, striking his claim on this Spec 1 championship. Himself and Green still going to be the drivers that we have to keep our eyes on all throughout this race. And as it stands at the moment in this qualifying session with only 5 minutes left to go, only about 3/10 between the two of them. Actually a little bit less than that. You can tell my public math school's failing me right at the most inopportune time. But Green's still up towards the front, and as we've seen in past races with this series, you could have a whole lot happen. You could have a meteorite come down and run into the gravel trap on the outside of turn number 2. I remember a couple of seasons ago, probably a year ago actually at this point in the Weekend Warriors world, there was some strange UFO activity in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors series where a car was just being like sucked up into the heavens after an incident heading through turn number 2. So Okayama may be going to lend itself to some very strange things in the Maunz of Japan, so who knows, could have some pretty odd happenings throughout the 30 minutes of racing action we're going to have starting in a couple of minutes time.
Yeah, hopefully we don't have too many more alien abductions or weird physics anomalies here. We've had a few of those this year, and I believe that you and me, through our careers broadcasting here, have had more than a few, for sure. But back to the track there, I think the split that we're seeing kind of at the top here, we've been seeing people pretty much nose to tail all season, and this might be one of the biggest gaps I think that we have seen so far. As I mentioned that, of course, Green just pips one in, and he was pretty much the farthest back in what I was just mentioning there as well for the top 3, and he's kind of got right up there within 1/10, but even within a 1/10 or so, that's kind of one of the bigger gaps we've seen all season, and I think that probably has a lot to do with this track at the end of the day. It's very easy just to kind of mess a lap up, to be honest. I'm sure that the top 3-4 guys here are all pretty close in lap time with each other, but it's very easy to just make a very small mistake around here and lose a 1/10 or even 2/10 or maybe even 3/10. I think during the race, once we actually do get racing and once we get nose to tail and that draft happens, I think we're probably going to have a pretty big draft of cars, and I don't think we're going to have such a big gap anymore, Ron.
Yeah, come time for the race, most of this field is going to be vacuum sealed together. It's like putting a bunch of chicken tenders or chicken breasts in a big trash bag and then just vacuum sealing them together. But with that terrible, just absolutely abysmal simile out of the way, I gotta say, Green grabbing the pole right at the last moment. That was his last opportunity to try and get the job done, and he did it in pretty good fashion as well. That's a significant margin between himself and Tulo, and a kind of gap like that, that's gonna help you out a lot, not just in terms of getting moves done all throughout this race and of course grabbing the pole. You also got some bonus points as well for drivers who do well all throughout this race, and also the psychological factor as well, because as much as we've seen some games on track, the mind games that some of these drivers like to play with each other plays a pretty big factor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, no mind games any bigger than being so close in points and so on, and really having to put that time in today, and then obviously being able to hold it together for the race. And yeah, by the end of the race here, we could have a new leader and a championship winner as well. So that's always going to weigh on your mind a little bit, as well as some other people on the back of the field here who can gain some positions as well today. So you're always going to have that on your mind. I know going into the race tomorrow for myself there, I think I have a far enough lead in the two categories at the moment not to worry about it. But I can tell you, when you're going into these races worrying about points, it definitely weighs on you.
Oh, it absolutely does. From my real-life driving experience, that sort of stuff, just getting into your competitor's mind when it comes to championship fights, that's really big as well. One of my closest friends, who I've been racing with since about 2016 at this point, real great guy, name is Robbie Campbell. He's fantastic karting racer, probably the best driver that I've ever competed against IRL. He is a brilliantly quick driver, and also kind of insane as well. Whenever we're in iRacing together and we just set ourselves these stupid and outrageous challenges with lap times, he will always try and hack at it and hack at it and hack at it until he can get the most out of the race car. Maybe I just don't have a racer's mind like I used to when I was a kid, but I see him doing that. I'm like, are you out of your mind? But anyways, getting back to the point I was going to mention, back in 2021, him and I were locked steady in a very close championship battle, and I remember coming up to him before he got in the cart. I just grabbed him by the shoulders and just shook him. I just shook him once, and that was the closest I had gone to him all season long. We were running shifter carts. I was running a Honda CR125 motor, which is not a quick shifter cart motor nowadays. Used to be the top shifter cart motors you can get about 10 years ago, but that was about 10 years ago. He was running in a much quicker engine, but I was able to nearly beat him. It was only 0.2 of a second between him and I after that day of racing action. So those mind games, even in the virtual world, can play a huge factor in deciding who's going to be victorious, and not just this race, but the respective championship fights as well. We're also going to be touching on the Spec 2 championship fight, as Brian Stasinski's leading that class at the moment in front of Hank Mel, who I don't believe is racing here today, so looking very good for Brian in that 841 car. Definitely be keeping tabs on both of our respective class championship fights. But one thing that we're going to be keeping our eyes on in a couple of moments' time is the starting grid. 40 cars with you here today, so may God have mercy on Josh and I's vocal cords. Jason Green going to be grabbing the pole position in the number 1 car, Thor Tulo in the number 90 car. Very thankful that he's not going to be starting this race in 90th. Instead, he's going to be starting in second, sharing that front row with his championship rival of Green. That's Christopher Berry going to be starting in third, Stefan Heemskerk in fourth. Chris Montgomery going to be starting this race from the 5th position. Dylan Fernando in 6th. 1 point to raise about Montgomery. He won the season finale 1 season ago here for the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors, so we may need to keep tabs on him here at Okayama. Then starting this race in 7th is going to be Suleiman Khan. Jason Perry going to be starting alongside in 8th. Guido Marzucchi, the Italian, in the number 19 car, going to be starting in 9th. Next to reigning series champion Jesus Rodriguez. Matthias Marin, the Canadian, in 11th. Jörg Monty starting this race from the 12th position. Looking through the rest of the starters that we have inside the top 20, we have Alan DeGassis in the number 27 car. Parvinder Ladar, the Spec 2 racer, in the 14th position in the 432 car. Simon Mayer going to be starting right behind in 15th. Andrew Love in 16th. Javier Rapula is going to be starting this race from the 17th position. Trent Kramer alongside in 18th. And then running at your top 20 is going to be Antonio Reese and Russell Telker.
And then right behind that, we have Brian Straczynski in 21st, Jim Brewster in 22nd, Mark Cohn in 23rd, David Fitzgerald in 24th, and we'll scroll her ahead here a little bit. Michelle Lynn in 25th. Stevie Ray, the admin of Ray Esports, in 26th. Jeff Jacobson in 27th. Steph Spoolman in 28th. Michael Laturo in 29th. Daniel Salmon in 30th. 31st is Frederick Dumont. 32nd is Travis Rail. 33 is Edgar Sanchinelli. 34th is Dan Trzynski. 35th is Nick Tulo. 36th is Jason Grider, and then rounding out our field here, we have Brian Hansen in 37th, Wayne Buttermore in 38th, Steve Rossiter in 39th, Kurt Nunez in 40th, and Russell Lumberg bringing up the rear in 41st place, Ron.
So I kind of undersell it a little bit. 41 cars, not just 40. You need to have that extra one for a little bit of spice. One extra, yeah, there you go. It's like going to a fast food place and they throw in like an extra chicken nugget. You order a 10-piece and you get an 11-piece. I guess the 11-piece won't have the same ring to it on the menu. But before I make myself hungry or make any of the viewers hungry, we need to feast on what's going to be a great day of racing action. 41 cars around this track, 11 turns in all, and 30 minutes of racing action to decide 2 respective class champions and try and crown some new winners before we bring this season to a close. That pace car's made the turn down pit lane. The field now in the hands of our front row sitters, the championship rivals of Jason Green and Thor Tulo. It's going to be a hard day of racing action. So happy you can all be with us here. The green flag is at, and the drivers are on their way. It's going to be Jason Green going up through the gears, going to be trying to lead them heading off into turn number 1. Tulo not getting off to a fantastic start. He's going to be side by side with Barry heading off into turn number 1, battling for second and battling for the championship as well. You can see the field heading their way off through turn number 2 for the first time. Looks like all the field clean heading off through 1. Turn 2 on the other hand, this is a really tricky corner, that runoff area, that gravel strip on the outside. It's not a gravel trap, that is a strip more than anything else, but these racers still negotiating the first sector of this lap clean, and as it stands, coming out of turn number 4 for the first time, it's Green leading Tulo, leading Barry. However, with this massively long back straightaway, we may see that Formula Vee game of leapfrog continue here. Is it going to be Green or is it going to be Tulo leading heading out of turn number 5 in a couple of moments time? It'll be a battle last late breakers between these two racers. Some side-by-side action a little bit farther in the back with Rodriguez and Perry as well, but looking at the front, it's going to be Tulo withstanding that challenge and coming at the victor as it stands with the first round of the battle between Tulo and Green.
Yeah, we're having, I don't want to jinx it, but a very clean lap as I say that. Somebody spin, but very, very minor there. Nobody collected him, so we're looking pretty clean out there, Ron, and there's a lot of cars to get around the track. And as I say that, immediately we have a pretty big crash in the back there that we'll have to catch up with. We got somebody bouncing nose and tail there. He is going head over tea kettle in the background, and we will have to check out exactly how that happened shortly. But all in all, pretty darn clean lap for 41 cars around Okayama here, Ron.
We've got some gymnast Formula V's, though. That's a major collision coming out of turn number 7 of Piper. That stacked up, I think, about 3 or 4, possibly even 5 or 6 cars. You can tell I was always great with estimating numbers in school as well. Tulo completing this first lap in the lead of the race. Green still slot in second. Just about the positions that both these racers need to be in. Green, though, he's going to try and look to grab the victory after a somewhat disappointing result at Laguna Seca 1 week ago. That's a little bit of an off-track excursion. I believe it was Trent Kramer who we just saw have some rally action coming out of turn number 1. Some drivers already making some moves. Here's Steve Rossiter in the 317 car. He's already made up a whole lot of positions. There's Kramer rejoin the racetrack in the number 20 car, currently running in 28th as it stands at the moment. One earlier on in the season at Navarra, but not looking like he's going to replicate that performance here at Okayama. But again, anything can happen between now and the checkered flag. We only have a tick over 2.5 minutes on the board, and we've already had some drama. Taking a look at a replay, this I believe may have been an off-track excursion involving Russ Lundberg in the 129 car, the RGL Motorsports car, negotiating that spinning car not too badly, but he got a perfect view of tumbling. Oh, and he T-boned that, I believe. Who was that? That may have been... Actually, not sure who that was. May have been Dan Stasinski, possibly. Don't quote me on that, though.
I think that may be right. There is quite a few incident reports here on the iRacing ticker. So it looks like we have more than a couple people who got caught out in that last one here. And I think maybe this is going to be the beginning of it. And yeah, it looks like we had Spoolman with a bit of a spin there. Yep, and then just collecting other cars. Looks like he tried to get out of the way there, and unfortunately it didn't work out for him. So, yeah, that was kind of a big one. Collected a bunch of cars there on.
And we had 2 flippers, 2 drivers barrel rolling coming out of turn number 7. We've had some aerial acrobatics thus far this season. We're not talking about the usual weekly Formula Vee Weekend Warriors crash 'em up wreckfest at the end of these races. That was just a simple collision. 2 cars, though, barrel rolling, corkscrewing their way, coming out of turn number 7, and it was Seth Spolman that we saw get T-boned by Russ Lundberg, who really had nowhere to go. I think we may have some drama involving Stevie Ray. He's dropping down the running order along with Brian Stasinski. I think there may have been a moment involving those two. There's Stevie in the 211 car. He stopped on the inside of turn number 1. There's a dangerous position for Stevie to be stopped in. He gets it turned around, now running all the way down in 34th. May have been a simple spin, got to load up a replay, and I think it may have been an incident with himself and Stasinski, because I saw those two dropping down like a rock right in tow, and there it was. 2 drivers fighting for the same piece of real estate coming out of turn number 1. It's going to spin Stevie around and cost Stasinski, the championship leader in the Spec 2 category, mind you, a little bit of time.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You definitely can't really blame that one on Stevie, I don't think, but it's, it's sort of hard to blame on either one, I suppose. It's just 2 drivers kind of looking for the same piece of track. It did look like Brian kind of came down on Stevie a little bit. Maybe he just did not know he was there. Either one of them knew they were there, but unfortunate nonetheless. It does look like he got away with without some damage there, though, so he will be able to join back up and hopefully make some more positions up here. But, man, it is just hammer and tong at the front here. We got about 6 cars nose to tail. We've had a change for the lead at least twice here, and I would imagine we're going to keep seeing that almost every lap here down that straightaway. And that's just pretty much them trying to stay away from the people behind them. If you have to check up for the person in front of you, you're only going to get caught by the people behind you. You want to use that draft, kind of leapfrog in front of the other person, and then hopefully if you guys playing ball with each other, you can kind of pull away from the pack. But as we can see here, going too wide into T1 again, it looks like this is going to be like this all race, I think, Ron.
Oh, and you can see the fact that these racers are fighting for a championship, considering that Green really didn't back out of it. Still holding his own, was around the outside through turn number 1, down the inside line, off through turn number 2. This is a valiant effort from Green, but it's not going to be successful. He's going to relegate himself back down to 2nd, as Heemskerk with a mighty run, going to try and get a move done on Christopher Berry, heading off into turn number 4. Looks like he's going to be unsuccessful in that challenge just about now, but it's all important to get a great exit coming out of that corner. That come time for the final lap of the race is going to be maybe the most important corner out of all of them that we've driven around all throughout this season. That may be the one that makes or breaks your season. Looking at this peloton forming here, Rodriguez the last car in it. This hornet's nest of race cars heading their way off side by side into turn number 5. That's a fight between Tulo and Green, and off-tracker excursion for a lapped car a little bit farther in front of them, as we just saw some side-by-side action involving Jason Perry going side-by-side, both trying to overtake Heemskerk and nearly getting overtaken by Montgomery. But this pack up towards the front, 7 cars strong, is just absolutely insane, and it looks like that's going to continue as Heemskerk trying to get a move done on Berry, heading off into the corner, incredibly deep in the braking zone, off into turn number 8, but it looks like Heemskerk going to try and wheel it still around the outside through the third to last corner of Hobbs, going off into the dirt as well. Stefan Heemskerk, gotta say, he is one of the most exciting drivers to follow in the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series. He may not have a victory throughout the season, at least an overall victory, won the Spec 2 series, Spec 2 class earlier on this season, but even then, he has been one of the most exciting drivers to follow all throughout this season, because that man behind the wheel, the number 96 car, he just does not give up.
Yeah, absolutely. He's always been there in all of these battles, hasn't he, Ron? And kept it pretty darn clean throughout the season as well. I think probably by the end of the season here, he's actually kind of cleaned up a little bit, and it looks like he's kind of just biding his time and stuff when you get into these positions now, whereas before, near the beginning of the season, he was really getting involved in it. And now it looks like he's kind of sitting back and waiting for something to happen and hopefully be able to monopolize on it when it does. And I think this is probably the race to do that, and he's in great position here as well to potentially take his first overall win today.
Yeah, that'd be a really good result for the Dutchman behind the wheel, the number 96 car. He's had a brilliant season up to this point. If he stayed in Spec 2, because he did start the season off as a Spec 2 driver a couple of rounds late, he definitely would have been our Spec 2 champ because he has been infuriatingly quick for some of his competitors. We nearly saw 4-wide action coming out of turn number 2 a couple of moments ago, but I think we may have just seen a little bit of an incident, maybe involving Montgomery. He just got shuffled down to 7th. Still within tow of those drivers in the front pack, so I don't think it was any sort of major collision. Now, however, I think there may have been an off-track moment involving Mark Cohn. He's dropping down the running order along with Michelle Lynn, so that's going to be a really tough go of things for both of those racers. May have been an incident hang off into the hairpin at turn number 5 not terribly long ago. Whole lot to keep track of with a massive field of race cars, and even with some of the drama we saw earlier on, lots of them still out there on the racetrack right now. Got to take a look at a replay to see some of this drama. There you can see Lynn and the 05 car. Maybe it's an over. Oh no, it's contact coming out of the corner. Michelle really with nowhere to go. We didn't even mention her, and she still got struck by that falling anvil.
Yeah, that was pretty unfortunate there. There was really nothing Michelle could do about that, and honestly, that kind of put the cap on the season for her. She's just had bad luck this season. Really no fault of her own many times that we've had to comment on, oh, there's another falling anvil, oh, there's another falling anvil, and honestly, that's just the way it is sometimes in that part of the pack. I know exactly what it's like. The racing, mid-pack and stuff can be very, very difficult, and that's just kind of the way it's going to represent itself from time to time, and unfortunately, she just got caught out there again. I really don't think there's anything she could have done to avoid that, Ron.
With the amount of falling anvils that have hit Michelle Lynn all throughout this season, you gotta wonder if she's just been flat out cursed. She's the reigning 2-time Spec 2 champion, moved on to Spec 1 this season, and I've said this quote in the past on some of these broadcasts. I'll save that for a moment though, so we got some 3-wide action for the lead. Christopher Berry slipping in, going 3-wide with Green and Tulo, coming in out of nowhere to take the lead of this race. A tick over 10 minutes on the clock now. Well done from Christopher Berry in the 65 car. That was a slick move, splitting the middle, going 3-wide off it to turn number 5. It was a battle of less late breakers, and he was the one that prevailed, but it's going to be another battle of less late breakers between Green and Tulo heading off it to turn number 8 right about now. These two racers, usually you'd expect these two drivers who are a bit more conservative in the way they attack these races, you'd usually expect them to maybe be a bit more lenient in the way they race. No, they are kicking on the hyperjets. They are breaking the elbows out. There is no love lost between these two. They respect each other as competitors, but it would be lying if we said there haven't been a couple of moments in which their pseudo-rivalry, for lack of a better term, has flared up. There's an incident between these two that led on a couple of weeks ago, which has inflamed a little bit of tension between these two, doubly so considering they're battling for a championship. Tulo trying to get a move done around the outside, heading off through turn number 1 right now. Berry just set the 5th lap of the race from the lead, but Tulo still trying to wheel it around Green, going to get the move done successfully, heading off into turn number 2. But in all of that battling and these drivers hitting each other with elbows, it's actually allowed Berry to break away a little bit. It's not going to be enough for him to break the draft, but 0.6 of a second, that should not be scoffed at either.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you're going too wide like that through a quarter of the track and that compromised line into T1, even though he did make it stick, it's just not going to be as fast as taking the fastest line through there. And as we know from most of the races, or all of the races with the V's, momentum is key in these things. And if you get on the clappers a little bit too hard, you're going to lose tenths really, really fast as we go too wide in 2 packs. And it looks like we're going to sort ourselves out here. You got to think for Jason and for Thor, it's all about just surviving today as well. If one of them drops out, that's it. It's over. And we know how close they are in points. They need to finish right beside each other here and one in front of the other for one of them to take this win today. And it's going to be a pretty interesting one right down to the wire, I think, here with 7 other cars that are probably going to be in the fight by the end here, who are going to have a different thing to say about that and definitely aren't going to make it easy on either one of them.
Yeah, to show you how close it is in terms of the championship fight between Green and Tulo, it's 5 points separating these two racers heading into the last race of this season. Oh, and that's some drama heading off through turn number 9. Who was that? Mega sideways. That, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, losing out some time, was Javier Rapules, who's now getting shuffled back. He was mega sideways heading through the section. I think there may have been some elbows broken out with himself and I believe Rustelker. So a bump and run attempted in some Formula Vee racing. Actually, Actually, no, my apologies. That was just a simple spin for him heading through that corner. Well held, though, it must be said. The fact he was able to keep that car going without a sort of major disaster, that was a pretty good... Actually, you know, I'm trying to think now. Was it actually Telker that was mega sideways? I'm getting a little bit lost track in the action that we have all throughout this race. That's the thing with the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series. Usually got some ridiculous moments that completely lead you to having your jaw drop on the floor. Like Tulo trying to go for a move around the outside, heading off through turn number 4. Green now going to capitalize. He's going to be enjoying the drift off the back of Christopher Berry's race car. Tulo, unless he is very careful, he may get railroaded here because you got Perry Rodriguez and Heemskerk closing up as well. They're going to send Tulo back to hell. This is going to be not ideal at all for Tulo unless he can hold on 3 wide heading off through turn number 5.
Well done.
That's not the sort of racing you want to have happen thus far in this race. I think that we got a whole lot of battling up and down this grid. I gotta feel bad for you, Josh. You gotta be like a chameleon looking at about 14 bajillion different things at once. Perry was standing a challenge from Rodriguez at this point in time, but it looks like Tulo avoiding disaster and even able to get that move done back on green to slip his way up into second. I think that was very well executed from Tulo because based off the situation he found himself in a couple of moments ago, hang down the back straightaway, that could have ended in an absolute disaster.
Yeah, there's nothing better on than being able to break away like that, making a good move, and just watching the guy behind you kind of have to deal with it. And it looks like that's what's happening here with Thor. That was a great move for sure. And the best thing you can do right now is try to get out front, try to break away from this pack of cars here. That's just going to make life a lot more difficult. And it looks like these 3 cars in the front here are starting to make that happen, really only because Jesus Rodriguez, Jason Perry, and Stefan Heemskerk are fighting tooth and nail here. They've been side by side for multiple laps. You can see Jason Perry having a little look around, even the last lap at the top 3 there, and you can see how much they've dropped back, even in 3 or 4 corners, just squabbling with each other. And that's what's going to happen around this place for sure. So we've got another pack of cars here going 2 wide all over the track. There's another pack actually here down with Daniel Salmon that we saw a little bit earlier on that great avoidance that he took from the cars in front of him there. Looks like he's actually lost a position since then, but we've got another fight and another pack going on back here as well, Ron.
Daniel Zippy Salmon, commentator, comedian, and 14th place runner as it stands at the moment here in the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors season finale, finding himself in the midst of a Hornets that's kind of leading it for the time being. However, anything can happen whenever you see a battle like this begin to form. Chaos can break out. We've seen it happen thus far in the past. Look at that. That looks like a formation lap. 2 wide, 3 back. That was ridiculous. Heading off into turn number 5, but it looks like they're going to single file out. Heading off through turn number 6 and 7 now, with the exception of Telker and Salmon going side by side. Look at Kramer spinning around Telker coming out of turn number 7. The bump and run is not a successful maneuver in a Formula V race car. Such a shame for Telker. He's putting together a really good drive, but that's going to sting for him. Kramer applying the chrome horn, or whatever you want to call it, the plexiglass horn in a Formula V race car. Either way, this move from Kramer certainly not going to win himself any love from Telker.
Yeah, absolutely not. You would hope to think, right? Trenton's not the kind of guy that's going to pit maneuver somebody on purpose. He thought he had a little bit of clearance there, and he just didn't, unfortunately, and caught the nose of the car on the back of Russell's car, and that's kind of the end of it for Telker. So really not a good one there. I wouldn't be happy if I was Russell, but that's racing, and it happens sometimes, unfortunately, in the last round here. That's pretty much going to send it for him, and looks like Trenton's going to live to fight another day here and see if he can't make some more places up, but unfortunately Russell, that'll pretty much be it for him.
We'll have to see if the racing gods may try any form of retribution against Trent Kramer. Certainly won't rule it out. The iRacing gods can be a little bit frivolous at times. Looking now at a pack forming here. This is odds. So Tulo, Green, and Barry, they've checked that. That front pack that we saw 7 cars strong has split up. It's now about 2.5 seconds between Rodriguez, who's now leading this train, and Barry running in the final podium position. So looking now at this fight, this is an odd change of events for these drivers here, Josh, because, I mean, they were stuck together like they had super glue on their arms. Now, however, spreading out a little bit, they may actually find themselves in a position where you see the likes of Simon Mayer, Alan DeGassis, and Guido Marzucchi a little bit farther in the back, a shot close up to them. I certainly won't rule that out at all between now and the checkered flag. Still got 12 minutes of racing from not just this race, but this entire season as well, and it's the two championship rivals, Green and Tulo, up towards the front. 5 points separating them heading into this final race. The advantage is to Tulo in terms of the points entering this race. Green hoping to grab the victory, while he's also hoping for the racing gods maybe to strike a little bit of lightning on Tulo.
Yeah, absolutely. They are kind of checking out here, aren't they, Ron? And that other pack behind doesn't look like they're fighting quite as efficiently as the front pack here, and they are being caught by the likes of Guido Marzucchi, Andrew Love, and Parvinder Ladar here. And I wouldn't be surprised if near the end of the race here in the next 10 minutes or so that we actually do have a bit of a longer train here by the end of the race. And it looks right now that Jason Green and Thor Tulo, nobody really seems to have an answer for them quite yet, except for maybe Christopher Berry here, who could really throw a wrench in the gears for these two and for their championship hopes as well. You really don't want to get caught up with a car who is not in the championship, and it can be very frustrating when somebody is splitting the gap between you and the car that you need to beat. So we'll see how this plays out in the end, but I have a feeling that Christopher Berry is going to be a bit of a wrench in the gears for Thor and for Jason Green.
Yeah, this is not what Tulo or Green had in mind. I mean, they probably weren't expecting to have a fight just all by their lonesome like we saw at the beginning of the season at Alton Park when they had that fantastic side-by-side finish, in which even our live timing software was confused who took the checkered flag in first. But Tulo and Green, they probably weren't thinking for a driver like Christopher Berry to be involved in that. Maybe my knowledge is just a little bit off, but I don't believe I've ever seen Christopher Berry run in not just this Formula Vee Weekend Warriors series. I don't think I've seen him run in a Weekend Warriors race, including the Formula Fords and the Spec Racer Fords either. So making his Weekend Warriors debut in my mind, and what a way to do it, battling with the drivers who have proved themselves all season long as the drivers to beat week in and week out. He's getting tussly with them, and Josh, you mentioned this earlier on in reference to Berry. If he is a fixture of next season, we may need to keep an eye on him, because despite the fact he's running in third, he's shown a whole lot of pace all throughout this race. And actually looking at my live timing software right now, I believe he's still, I mean, in terms of pace, he's actually quicker in terms of best lap than Green, and he's actually quicker than both of them. So he has the best lap of the race out of these front three, which is a little bit surprising considering, as I've said, they've been the ones to beat.
Yeah, a lot of the time when you're seeing that at this point in the race, it's basically like he's got one in the chamber just waiting till the end. He's definitely got the pace, and like you said there, Ron, I think maybe, Chris Berry, knowing that there's a championship and that this is the last race, and I'm sure he's fairly aware that these two have been fighting, is maybe kind of just trying to stay out of the fray a little bit for these guys as well, because it does look like he has the pace here, Ron, and there is definitely seemingly one in the chamber here with that lap time. So I wouldn't be surprised if either A, he decides to kind of hang back here and let these two continue to go too wide as Jason sends it deep on the outside and on the outside of Thor there, and just holds on to it. Actually held on to that position, which is pretty interesting. Actually, I was expecting Thor to kind of really go up the inside there, but he didn't. So I think everybody's kind of playing a bit of a game of cat and mouse right now, Ron.
Yeah, I think a lot of these drivers are keeping their hand very close to their chest. They don't want to show the cards that they have at this point in time, so they're taking a bit more of a relaxed approach to this stage of the race. One section of the field that's certainly not feeling relaxed at all is this field that we're following right now, following Guido Marzucchi in the number 19 car. And I mentioned earlier on the fact that the pack of Montgomery, Rodriguez, and Heemskerk and Perry were feeling at risk of the likes of Mayer, Marzucchi, and DeGastis catching up. Look at, I mean, they have definitely caught up, and looking through that chunk of the field, from the gap between Berry and Montgomery for P3 and P4, you have to go all the way back down to Andrew Love in 11 to find a gap bigger than a second. So it's a pretty close field that we see right now. Some side-by-side racing involving Jason Perry and Simon Mayer heading off through turn number 1. Marzucchi may be going to get involved in this pack as well. Certainly going to be keeping tabs on this battle, because if there's any sort of drama, I feel like it's going to be big league, usually when you see a battle like this, the tension brews, and when the tension brews for that long, it's kind of like a fully stretched out bungee cord. You cut that thing, someone's going to get hurt with a snapback. So we may end up seeing something like that befall some of these racers. They're certainly battling hard, trying to fight for all the points and all the positions that they can in the last race of this season. These two, though, they're battling for the points. They're battling for the most important points of them all. Tulo and Green fighting for the win in the last race of this season. Now, where have we seen this before, Josh?
Yeah, pretty much every race, right? We've had, there's been kind of another car in there. Maybe it was Heemskirk, maybe it was Rodriguez, maybe it was Marzucci. But this week it is Seabury, and he may just end up wrecking this party for them, Ron. He's having a pretty good look here. He seems to be getting a little bit closer. We are getting to the wee hours of the race, and I have a feeling maybe he's not going to be waiting around here as well. We shall see if we can keep it clean till the end. That's going to be the big decider here, I think. We've seen more than a couple times either Jason or Thor throw it away in the last 5 minutes or so, and we're approaching that time right now. However, a lot of the time we did have kind of a bigger pack than this at the front, so it is kind of just these three guys. If they can keep it kind of calm here, which I don't think is going to happen, then hopefully we'll be able to have a nice clean finish and maybe even right down to the line here, Ron, because that's certainly what it's starting to look like.
Calm, cool, and collected racing drivers involved in a high-stakes championship battle. That goes together about as well as sodium and water, but like pure sodium where it'll explode on impact. I feel like I completely butchered that, having to explain that. My slight amount of time in chemistry in high school is seeming to help me out during this broadcast. Never would have thought that I would ever have something like that, but looking at a battle here involving a lot of cars. You got Daniel Zippy Salmon, Jim Brewster, and Jeff Jacobson who we're riding on board with right now. Gotta say, this race has been fantastic thus far. Have had a whole lot of battles up and down the grid. Usually wouldn't expect that around a racetrack where it's got only one majorly long flat out blast in these draft-heavy Formula Vee race cars, but it's been a fantastic day of racing action thus far, and this broadcast wouldn't be possible if it weren't for Jim Brewster. So Jim, hope you're watching this broadcast. Thank you very much for all the hard work you do behind the scenes to make this Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series possible. And thank you very much for making this broadcast possible as well, because this race has been fantastic. And hey, folks, we still got 5 more minutes of racing action left to go to bring this season to a close. Zippy trying to get him moved on Trent Kramer heading off into turn number 5. He tries it and he gets it done. So that's going to be fairly set in stone between those two racers. Fairly set in stone for those two racers for about 2 corners. That's the only guaranteed amount of time that a move can stick in a race like this, because it's been back and forth all season long. The seesawing with these drivers overtaking each other, getting some moves done, and the seesawing on the back of Trent Kramer's race car heading through turn number 8. Sideways, slideways was a driver of the number 20 car. Pulls off a pretty good save, probably turn his front tires into rectangles, having to lock it up to keep it going in a straight line, but he still pulls off a nice save to remain in the 15th position. There's a pretty good recovery drive from Kramer, because we saw him earlier on in the race running down in 28th, so he has kept his nose to the grindstone and put on a pretty good drive, and he may find himself up in 14th in the not too distant future, considering he and Zippy gonna be side by side. Hang off into turn number 1. Brewster thinking about going for the move. I could see that he was maybe gonna say screw it and just keep his foot pinned to the floor, but he backed out of it there, and that's a smart call for the driver of the 133 car. You know, he's the admin for this series. He knows how these cars drive. He's been in situations like that before. He's battled for the win thus far this season. Well, earlier on, it was actually him and Thor Tulo in the second race of the season at VIR. Those two were battling for the win. Tulo edging him out when everything was said and done, but Brewster is a very fast driver in this series, so he's going to be trying to apply a little bit of patience, but also using that speed that he has to maybe get some moves done. Who knows, is it going to be a move done by speed, or is he going to wait for Kramer and Salmon to just blow apart? We'll just have to wait and see. Gotta say though, Brewster maybe gonna try and get the 2-for-1 deal. They're 3 wide heading off into turn number 5. He nearly got the move done on Zippy, nearly got the move done on Kramer. Instead, he's not going to get that 2-for-1 deal. That coupon was expired. He may get the 1 though, as he and Zippy still side by side hang off through turn number 7 and 8 right now. Look at Jeff Jacobson riding on board with him right now. He may try and get a move done on Zippy as well, using that momentum coming out of turn number 7, heading through the braking zone of 8 right now. Nearly 3 wide there. I don't think so, gents.
Yeah, some pretty good racing here down in the mid-pack for sure. We had a couple little incidents there. We had, I believe Zippy kind of went off the road and lost a bit of time, and then Trenton caught him and he had a bit of a moment, and Zippy caught him, and now we're back in this pack here with Brewster out front, who monopolized on all of it. So I think we're probably going to see a couple more position changes here, but nice and clean in the mid-pack. Some good racing there from all the boys.
Yeah, and the good racing is looking to heat up towards the front of the field. I say heating up. It's like going from scalding hot to boiling hot. That's the only way I can describe it, because these racers have been putting on a fantastic drive at the front. Tulo and Green battling for a championship. Christopher Berry, a newcomer to the series, going for all-out glory. He has been exactly what I thought he was going to be, that being a thorn in the side for Tulo and Green. They have had a headache to deal with all throughout the race, and it comes in the form of Christopher Berry. He may still try and stick his nose in this battle. I certainly wouldn't rule it out. The driver actually has a higher I rating than both Green and Tulo, making his series debut. He's been fantastic to follow all throughout, and the action is still going to continue. Got battles up and down this grid, but I think this is going to be the one that we're going to be keeping our eyes on. We're coming to the white flag this time by as well, Josh, with less than a minute and a half left to go, and lap times nearly a bad 1 minute and 50. This is going to be it, so only one-ish more lap of racing action here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors for Season 4 of 2024, and who's going to be victorious? Is it going to be Green or is it going to be Tulo Gasse? In terms of the championship fight, I think it's looking very good for Tulo at this point in time, barring an absolute disaster and a total catastrophe for him. He can afford to have Green win in front of him. If he finishes in second, I'm pretty sure that's still going to be game, set, match in terms of the championship for those two racers, but who knows? We still got one more lap of racing action, and as much as the flag may be white, the tensions are going to be high and the mist is going to be red. Look at Christopher Berry getting a fantastic run, hang down the start-finish straightaway. Gonna try and go for that 2-for-1 deal, but he's sideways, slideways coming through turn number 1. He's gonna have to back out of it. He needs to save up his stuff, save up a run coming out of turn number 4, save up a move heading into turn number 5, and make sure that it sticks. The following corners coming out of turn number 5 lends itself to some great side-by-side racing. We see it all throughout this race. We're gonna see it again with these drivers battling for the podium positions. They're coming to the checkered flag next time by with only 3, 2, 1. No time left. This is it for these racers. They have one more opportunity to get it done, one slick opportunity to get it done, and that is turn number 5. Tulo and Green side by side. Berry gonna make it 3. He's gonna try and go for the move heading down the inside off into turn number 5. That's a good position to find yourself in. Let those two racers battle for the championship and worry about the points, and he could just say, hey, thank you very much, and take that lead, which he has done now. Berry in the lead of this race, heading through turn number 7 for the last time in this race. Look at some side-by-side racing involving Mayer and Perry. Think there may have been a spin or a moment involving Jacobson. Saw some smoke as well as those racers were heading through that section not terribly long ago. But here's the battle up towards the front. They got some traffic to deal with as well. I'm not sure how much of a factor that's going to play in this fight. Hopefully that lap car is going to get out of the way of a race leader of Christopher Berry to allow this to be a heads-up fight between Berry, Tulo, and Green. Is Tulo going to be able to get a move done? Is Green going to be able to get a move done? How is it going to be when these drivers hit the checkered flag in a couple of moments time? Looking good for Berry. That gap isn't closing as much as Tulo may have had in mind, and for the final time in this season, it's going to be Christopher Berry taking the checkered flag, but taking the championship is going to be Thor Tulo. He finished second, but he finishes in the front of Green, and that's all that matters in the championship fight. Tulo going to be your 2024 Season 4 Spec 1 champion. Look at some finishes a little bit farther in the back. There's Suleiman Khan, who are falling right down the number 55 car. He's in the midst of a hornet's nest right now. Some photo finishes after over 30 minutes of racing action, so pretty slick between all of those racers. I'm curious where Brian Szynski is. He had a pretty dominant lead in that Spec 2 championship. Hasn't had a good race though, so I'm trying to see where exactly he is on the running order at the moment. There he is, just crossing the line right now, all the way down in 26th, but I believe that may be enough for the driver of the 841 car to take the Spec 2 championship here for Season 4 of 2024. But Josh, that battle with Berry, Tulo, and Green, I think Barry did exactly what he needed to do. He realized the situation. He knew the fact that Tulo and Green didn't want to have it coming together. They did not want to have an incident, because if one of them did and the other got away with it scot-free, that was going to be game, set, match in terms of their championship fights. So I think Barry just played his cards to absolute perfection at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like we were saying earlier there, Ron, that he was kind of just waiting for his time to do it. I think he had one in the chamber, and he was waiting for about 10 laps to really shoot it. And he did right there at the end, and made a really nice, clean pass on Thor and on Jason. And I think they pretty much just kind of got out of the way, knowing that if one of them takes a hit, that's going to be it for them for sure. So sort of let him come by on the inside there, and then it's just the battle between Thor and Jason. And Thor came out on top this season, but not for lack of trying there, and Jason definitely had a great season as well, chasing, and we had some other close finishes down the line as well. I believe it was Andrew Love took the win in Spec 2, followed by Matthias Martin there as well, and then Daniel Salmon, I believe, actually taking a podium today in 3rd place in S2.
Yeah, well done from all those racers, giving us some fantastic battles up and down the grid. But, you know, despite the fact that we had some champions to crown, and I think we've got one more thing. It's always a fixture of these Formula Vee Weekend Warriors races. Got to see some donuts, some Champions donuts at that from Thor Tulo, as I think there's a wreck fest off into the hairpin of turn number 5. But Tulo revving up that motor, trying to rev up those fryers to give us some donuts. Trying to do some donuts in a Formula Vee race car is about as hard as trying to pick up antimatter with chopsticks. So you can see Tulo trying to do it, maybe going to blow up his transmission in the process. Is he going to get some sliding there? Maybe, possibly, I'm not too sure. Ooh, that's a smoke screen a little bit farther in the back. Tulo, don't crash it now. Oh, I think he just scraped the wheel there. So Tulo, he was practically flawless all throughout the season. Got involved in some incidents here and there, but he ends up winning the championship. Oh, what in the post-apocalyptic hellscape is this?
Well, we have our admin Stevie Ray in there joining the fun as well. This is always definitely a staple of the Weekend Warriors series here, is to burn the car down at the end, and in true fashion, we're doing it quite well here. We're looking like we have perhaps not some quite so PG looking race cars going right there, and then yeah, look at this. We got everybody involved as usual here. It's always just a good burn down at the end of these, and always super fun, you know, with the simulator stuff, that you can just wreck your car at the end. I mean, how many times do you get to do that?
This used to be a family show, Josh. Thank you very much for that. This is... I will never get... Oh my god, there's Heemskirk just... Oh boy, he's stuck in the fence, so he's trying to escape the racetrack. He had a pretty wild season all throughout, and I gotta wonder if Heemskirk maybe fixes some of those slight inconsistency problems that he's run into all throughout the season. If he fixes those, maybe gets a bit more calm and cool and collected in these races, he may be a strong contender for the Spec 1 Championship for Season 1 of 2025, and that right there was gearbox to gearbox contact there for Zippy. Oh, I just heard some motor blow up there. The indistinguishable sound of metal snapping in the world of iRacing. Looking at some very torn up race cars. You know what the worst part about this is oh boy. Yeah, I thought we were gonna have a flashback to what was said a couple of moments ago. You know what the worst part about all these race cars is, Josh? Probably sell for about 15 grand in the city of Philadelphia on Auto Trader.
Yeah, these days up where I live in Canada too, used cars are going for about as much as a new car a few years ago. So yeah, one of these would probably go for premium up here, and unfortunately it is just digital parts, or fortunately, sorry, it is just digital parts, and we can just burn them down and have some fun doing it, and it's exactly what we're doing here for sure. So we should probably here see if we can't get to some results. Ron, what do you say?
Yeah, I think we should probably get a touch of the results. I gotta say, we may have called it incorrectly. I apologize to Andrew Love, who I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, based off what Brian Szynski said in the YouTube chat, is actually the Spec 2 champion here from this season. We'll be able to have a chat with him in the not-too-distant future. But gotta get those results loaded up for you right about now to bring this season to a close, full of fantastic racing from start to finish. Some odd moments to be sure. Some strange wreck fest at the end, some drivers barrel rolling, But when everything is said and done from the last race of this season, it's going to be the newcomer Christopher Berry in the number 65 car taking the checkered flag in front of our Spec 1 champion of Thor Tulo, Jason Green, who came oh so close to pipping Tulo not just this race, but the season championship as well. He's going to round out your podium in third. That's Jesus Rodriguez with possibly his best drive all throughout this season. He is no longer the reigning Spec 1 champion, that going to Tulo. But Rodriguez, haven't seen a lot of him all throughout this season. Who knows, may see him in 2025 for Season 1. That would certainly be a really good storyline to follow. But in this race to bring this Season 4 of 2024 to close, he's going to finish in 4th. Stefan Heemskerk going to round out your top 5. Then we have Chris Montgomery in 6th, Jason Perry in 7th, Simon Mayer finishing this race in 8th, Andrew Love taking the Spec 2 race win and championship in 9th. Alan Degas is going to finish in 11th. Matthias Marin, actually no, my apologies, Degas is finishing in 10th, Matthias Marin finishing in 11th. Then we have Guido Marzuki in 12th, Trent Kramer in 13th, Jim Brewster, who was very generous to make this broadcast possible today, finishes in 14th. Suleiman Khan going to round out your top 15. Then we have Zippy finishing in 3rd of the Spec 2 racers, 16th overall. Jeff Jacobson in 17th, Kurt Nunez in P18, who I believe was a hard charger all throughout this race. I'll have to fact check myself on that in a couple of moments' time. And then rounding out your top 20 is going to be Javier Rapules and Frederick Dumont.
And then down in 21st here we have Dylan Fernando, Russell Telker in 22nd, Jason Grider in 23rd, Travis Rail in 24th, Jorg Mani in 25th, Brian Trzynski in 26th, Brian Hansen in 27th, Stevie Ray in 28th, and then we have Dan Szczynski in 29th, Wayne Buttermore in 30th, Seth Spoolman in 31st, Mark Cohen in 32nd, David Fitzgerald in 33rd, Michelle Lynn in 34th, unfortunately getting that falling anvil again, Antonio Reese in 35th, Michael Laturo in 32nd, Parvinder Ladar in 37th, Russ Lumberg in 38th, and then our last couple racers here, we have Nick Tolo in 39th, Edgar Sancinelli in 40th, and Steve Rossiter in 41st. We're on 7 laps down.
And that is going to round out our results from the final Formula Vee Weekend Warriors race of this season. 13 races long. I think the next time we'll see something like that, it's going to be... How does iRacing usually do it? Do they do it in leap years? I think they may do it in leap years. So next time you'll see a season like this, is it going to be until 2028? So I'll be knocking on the door of 25 by that point in time. Holy cow. But anyways, I think we'll move on from the results and bring some drivers in to have a little chat. And I think the driver who I am really pumped up to have a chat with is going to be our Spec 1 champion here from the 2024 Season 4, Thor Tulo. You got a copy here? I see your microphone is muted there, but well done on a pretty brilliant drive here at Okayama despite finishing in 2nd, but well done on a brilliantly executed season to become the champion.
Thank you so much, Ron. It was such a close season with Jason, and first and foremost, I got to give the biggest props to him. It was an absolute pleasure to be able to race with him this season, and it really just came down to the last lap. And I really am happy.
I can imagine you're very, very happy winning that heads-up fight with yourself and Green, because all throughout the season, even going back to the season opening race at Alton Park when you two gave us a fantastic photo finish in which our live timing software didn't even know who was victorious and all of that, you two just put on some fantastic fights all throughout this season, and I definitely noticed throughout this race here at Okayama that it was probably the most intense battle between you two. Is it okay if you can talk us through what it was like from your perspective with that battle? Because it looked like the gloves were off.
Oh, absolutely. Well, since we only had a 10-point gap between us from the start of the race, we both knew that we needed to get as many laps led as possible because we get 3 bonus points for the most laps led in our division. So it was just fighting tooth and nail to try and rack up those laps led. But we gave each other room. We just had maybe 1 0x net code, and yeah, it was just a fair fight right down to the wire, and I'm speechless.
I can imagine it's still hard trying to snap out of the racer's mind, considering how close that finish was between yourself and Green, battling tooth and nail, not just throughout this race, but all the 13 races we had throughout the season. So I want to ask you about that as well. Kind of your final thoughts on a season where, despite the fact you did walk away with the championship, it wasn't smooth sailing all throughout. There were some low moments, some high moments as well. A pretty roller coaster ride of a season here for 2024.
Definitely, for sure. I mean, I think I got the most wins this season, but also my consistency was absolutely everywhere. I'd get a win one week and then like 17th the next week. So honestly, I can't say I'm completely proud of my performance. I feel like I could have done better, but all in all, just as many bad days as I had, I feel like Jason had as well. So it just ended up working out.
Well, it certainly worked out for you grabbing that championship, which, hey, regardless of the circumstances that led to it, as long as you have the trophy at the end of the season, that's really all that matters when everything was said and done. But Thor, it was fantastic to follow you all throughout this season. But I want to ask you, a little bit pressure heading into Season 1 of 2025 as a reigning champion. Not sure if the official schedule for the Formula Vee iRacing series is out, which is usually what these Weekend Warrior schedules are based on. But I want to ask you, what are your general thoughts heading into that next season, which is set to begin in about 2 weeks' time?
Well, to be quite honest with you, Ron, I've got more excitement than pressure. I'm just excited to be able to race with these wonderful folks again, and I mean, I'm confident. I know my pace is hopefully there. So I'm hoping for a 3-time Formula Vee champion.
If that is the case, I think we'll start calling you Mr. 3-time, and that may actually that may you may not want to come back into the commentary booth if we start calling you that. So I may refrain from giving you that nickname. But man, it was a fantastic season for you all throughout. Really exciting from our perspective in the commentary booth to follow you and Jason Green's battles all throughout. And now, before we let you go and celebrate this championship and maybe do a little bit practice for the Week 14 Weekend Warriors runoffs, going to be hosted on some pretty fantastic UK tracks, but that's something we'll talk about in a couple of moments' time. Is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Well, again, first and foremost, I want to say thank you to Jason Green. It's been an absolutely lovely season to be able to battle with him, and it's been nothing but fair battles, and it's been wonderful. And thank you to Brabham Motorsport and to all my friends at the University of Derby for watching. And lastly, just thank you to Slow Motion Broadcasting. You guys have been absolutely stellar this season, and I really appreciate it.
And we appreciate the kind words there, Tulo. Always happy to have a chat with you after these races. Happy for you to win the championship, and excited to see you back out on the racetrack, wherever it is in the not-too-distant future, man. Thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on the championship.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that right there was Thor Tulo, your Spec 1 champion here for Season 4 of 2024 in the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. And we're going to give the floor now to Josh, and I'm going to let you have the opportunity to speak with the Spec 2 champion of Andrew Love. Going to have a Spec 2 on Spec 2 driver chat before we wrap things up from this season. So, Josh, I'll drag him into the commentary booth if you'd like to do the honors of interviewing him.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, great race, great season. You came out with the win today and came out with the win for the season. How do you feel, man?
I'm still shaking, Joshua. It was a great race. I need to apologize to Parvender for running into the back of him there in like lap 2 or 3, whenever it was. But I was glad it didn't affect him, glad it didn't knock him out of the race. And glad he was able to continue.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead there.
I was glad he was able to continue at least until the last corner of the last lap, and I saw him on the inside there, and I felt really bad.
Yeah, I mean, we've all had a bit of attrition here and there throughout the season, but I think you've kept it pretty darn clean throughout the season here in Spec 2 and took a fairly commanding win today, as well as the championship as well. Do you got any tips for us at all throughout an entire season, exactly how you keep it together and keep one of these season hopes alive? Or championship hopes alive, sorry?
I found a setup that I really enjoy, and I haven't changed it pretty much at all. Maybe I just changed the amount of fuel between qualifying and race, and I've just gotten really comfortable with the setup, and so that's where I am. I I don't change the setup basically, and then I just try to stay clean. I've been a lot cleaner this year than I have in past years, which is surprising. But yeah, just having fun, just out there having fun. It's a great bunch of guys, great bunch of folks, and Michelle too. Great bunch of racers to race against.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. It's just a great group of people to race against for sure, and everybody's so respectful of each other and so on as well. And will you be back here next season for some more racing as well?
I will definitely be back for next season. Depending on what changes are made, I may change classes or not. I kind of feel guilty for winning Spec 2, so that may cause me to want to move up to Spec 1. But they may change the requirements for Spec 1, so we'll see what happens.
Right, yes, in the FVs. I definitely know the pain a little bit of feeling a little bit guilty in S2 there, Andrew Love.
Yeah.
I think we're probably going to wrap up the season there and move up, and then I think you'll probably move up here as well. I think we probably have the speed, but I don't think anybody ever forces anyone here to move anywhere in the race, Ray Esports, if they don't feel like it. But really,
Josh,
sorry, go ahead.
Don't count your chickens before they hatch, man. Don't count your
that's
chickens
true.
before
That's
they
true. I think I'm far enough away to hold that one, but we shall see. But enough about me. Yeah, you're doing very well as well in the Spec 2s. I've raced you many times before. Very clean driver, and I got to give it to you, man. You had a great season here in the V's. It was great watching it. You kept it clean, and you came out with a really nice dominant win today, so that must have felt pretty good. Is there anybody you'd like to thank?
I want to thank Jim for putting the lead together and sponsoring today's race. I want to thank Stevie for starting the whole thing and being such a great guy, keeping the whole community together. I want to thank Michelle for just being a super person. I want to thank you guys for doing the broadcast. Thank Slow Motion Broadcasting as a whole for doing everything they do. And I've just had a really great time. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Well, we love having you, and it's been a great season watching you. So congratulations, Andrew, and we'll see you on track tomorrow, man. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, Joshua. And thanks, Ron.
And thank you, Andrew Love, for joining us in the commentary booth. The champion in the Spec 2 class, a pretty brilliant race, pretty brilliant season for him as well. The main performance that I think probably sticks out in my mind was a one at Indianapolis a couple of rounds ago where he damn near won that race overall, which may have been what pushed him over the edge in terms of this Spec 2 class championship fight here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. A season which was chocked full of amazing racing action, the stuff you usually expect from Formula V's and iRacing. You know, despite the fact they're not the quickest car, they're not the most sophisticated car, they're probably the most fun on the iRacing platform. They put on some brilliant racing regardless of what kind of racetrack you're running at. It could be a track that's maybe a bit more stop-starty, or it could be one that's fast and flowing. The Formula V's will look to put on some fantastic racing regardless of where they're running at. And Josh, we saw that get put on full display all throughout this season. 13 races strong, 13 different checkered flags taken for the overall winners and the Spec 2 winners as well. But it's Tulo and Love grabbing the championships. It certainly wasn't easy for the both of them, though. They had some fantastic fights to keep their abs on all throughout the race as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great season, Ron. We had a great calendar of tracks as well. Some new ones, Navarra, bunch of really good races this year. We had some attrition. We had some really clean driving as well. And in the end, Thor Tulo comes out on top, even though, he did have a few pretty tumultuous races during the season. But like he mentioned, so did Jason. And that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes at the end of the season. You only have to have a few more points and have that one race maybe that things didn't go quite as wrong. And hopefully next season we'll have an even cleaner group of, even cleaner races and an even bigger group of drivers here for next season. And really looking forward to it, Ron. It's been my pleasure, and absolutely amazing for me to be able to try this out. This commentating and producing thing at the same time means a whole lot to me out here. Lots of kind words from everybody, and I've had nothing but a blast doing this. So really looking forward to doing it again next season with you, and really looking forward to watching these drivers go out there and get some more wins.
I'll tell you what, Josh, I think this may be a little bit mean to say. There may be a slight chemical imbalance in your brain. The fact that sharing a commentary booth with me is somehow pleasurable for you. So that's the first time anyone has ever taken pleasure out of torture, but still a brilliant season from start to finish. Chock full of amazing moments and some amazing drives and some amazing drivers as well. The Weekend Warriors world, whether it be the Formula V's, whether it be the Formula Fords or the Spec Racer Fords that we'll be crowning some champions with tomorrow here on SMB, they always put on some fantastic racing. And, speaking of fantastic racing, just because this season here for Season 4 of 2024 with the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors is drawing to a close right about now, that doesn't mean the action is stopping here at Slow Motion Broadcasting. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to have the action with the Formula Fords running at Tsukuba to bring their season to a close. Got some champions to crown in that series, looking very good for some drivers. I will not mention them by name, but it's looking pretty good for some racers in that category. Same can be said with Spec Racer Fords as well. They're going to be running at Oran Park. You can catch all of that action tomorrow here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. I'll be on the call for the Formula Fords. You'll be able to catch Randall McGrew on the call for the Spec Racer Fords, and you'll also be able to see our very own Josh Wilkie running for some championships as well. And if you want to hear us yet again, you'll be able to catch our action, us calling the action, from the Ray Esports Club Racing League Group 3, going to be running their second race with Formula Vee's and Spec Racer Ford action at Sebring, upcoming on Sunday, December the 11th. So that's the stuff coming up here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Here's the stuff coming up on Pit Road Productions. That's the action from the Britannia iSports Series, where some racers are competing for some pretty good prizes and the opportunity to race some real-life race cars. Whether you want some action with some Radical SR10s or some action with some Formula Fords, you can catch that every single Wednesday evening over on Pit Road Productions. Got a little bit of a break in the schedule there as well for the holidays. I gotta say, I don't think I said this a couple of weeks ago, happy very late Thanksgiving to all the viewers as well. But with everything taken care of, all the business touched on, the champions crowned, and some winners spraying some champagne on the top step of the podium, I think for one final time here for the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors for Season 4 of 2024, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Maunz, Josh Wilkie joining me on these broadcasts, working the comms and the cams with me all season long, and the drivers and everyone that makes the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors series possible, and you, the viewer, as well, I say thank you all so very much for watching, not just this race, but this whole season as well, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.
I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes. There's
that was the
Budweiser.
biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
We welcome you all to Slow Motion for this presentation of the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and DeGassis heading into 5.
Oh, it's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh no.
Oh, and there's contact as well.